Okay, so hi, hello. So this is the basic programming part of the SumoBots tutorials. So I assume that you watched some of the other like videos. For example, you could have watched like the wiring and as well like just the videos about the parts that we're using, as well the video about actually setting up and installing the Arduino and the Arduino IDE. So we're basically gonna continue from there, and we're gonna talk about some basic programming techniques and how to program in the Arduino IDE. So let's get into it. So getting started, what you want to do is that you should already have the Arduino IDE installed and the whole application. So you just want to open it up and you want to create a sketch. So in order to do this, you can just go to File and press New Sketch. So File here, and then you can press New Sketch when it comes up. And also just some like background. So it'll create an Arduino that's gonna create like a .ini coding file, which is the what Arduino uses. And also Arduino, the language is basically it's based on C++. So once you do that and you create it, then you can just ensure that the board is set up properly. So you can just press tools and you can press board. You can set it to Arduino Nano, and you have to make sure that the port is correct. And the port should be in relation to like where you're plugging in the Arduino Nano to your computer. So, and one thing you can do in order to find it out is like, so you can initially look at the ports and then it'll show like a few ports, right? But then when you actually plug in your Arduino, then like a new port will come up representing the port that the Arduino is on. So then you can just choose that new port that came up. So that's just the initial setup. So now we're going to talk about the general structure of like an Arduino program. So when you create the sketch, it's going to automatically add in two default functions. The first one is the void setup, and the second one is the void loop. So void setup is used to declare like it basically that is the first thing that runs when you kind of try to run the code. Um, and it'll only run one time. This is for lots of the setup things, such as like declaring your motors, and also you can like declare like for example you might want to declare your motor as an output. So you might do that in the setup because it'll only run one time and it'll initially do that. Then from there in loop, you can have all the actions you want to do, like all the actual logic of your main code. So then this could be stuff like looking at the sensor reading, and then based on the sensor reading of the ultrasonic sensor, like based on the distance you are to other cars, then you can like do other actions as well. So this loop will just continuously run forever, and forever and ever. Then you can also make custom functions, which can just like which can make your overall code simple, like more simple, just because like all the like let's say that you have like a pretty complex like formula you want to do. Here we just did an example with multiplication, but let's say you have a very complex like algorithm or like formula, then you can just make it as its own function, and then you can just call the function, and you can just call the function like multiple times. It just makes the overall code in the loop easier. Like here, we just declare it to equal the multiply 2, 4. But if the function was like a lot more complicated, it would be such a long, confusing line. So that just makes it a bit more simple. So yeah, so you can just create your functions and you can call them in the loop or wherever you want to call them. And just to analyze like a function, we can see that we'll cover this more in depth later, but like the multiply, so that's a type of integer. So that means that it's going to return an integer. This is the name of it, multiply. And then it takes in two inputs, which are which are known as parameters. So this is going to be an integer, which can be set as a, and another integer, which is going to be referred to as b. And finally, we just multiply them and set and store the answer in product. And finally, we return product. So then here we're going to do multiply. When we call it, we just do multiply and we do our inputs, which are going to be like are basically arguments. So these come in, 2 represents A, 4 represents B, then the output is going to be like product, which is 2 times 4, and then it will return 2 times 4, which is 8. So then therefore, this will essentially be 8, so then my product will equal 8. Now, we're going to go into some more built-in functions that Arduino has to add some additional functionality. So like For example, you can initially at the top, you can use hashtag define in order to kind of set up your pins. Like you can say, okay, the motor is on pins like 2 and 3, if that's like where you connected your motor to. Or here we have an LED connected to pin 2. So then we'll just like tell Arduino that this is where everything's connected to. Yeah. And then as well, here you can just you can basically start up the serial monitor, which is like so like later on, if you make print statements, like print statements can be used to like print out values of variables or print out just like some status messages that you set. Like for example, here we're just printing hello world. So all this will all come into the serial like monitor. So then this just makes sure that you start the serial monitor so that you can view all this text and stuff in this overlay. You can also use pin mode right here as I mentioned before in setup, you can just do the initial things. So here we're declaring LED as an output, so we just do that initially. So yeah. Now like now now we're gonna talk about variables. So variables are very important. The variables are basically a nickname that represents the data it stores. So just like how people, like for example, my like nickname could be like Sachin because that's my name, but then but then that represents my whole like like that represents my personality, my DNA, and all my attributes. So 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 yeah. So like basically just through variables, like variables just allow it make it easier to access data, and they kind of represent data in a convenient and easy to and human readable way. So the data in variables, then this can have like different types and can be different things. So as you mentioned earlier, there was like types int and stuff. But here, so here we have an integer type, and that could be like, and that you can store like 4 or -8, for example. You can do a float, which is like a decimal number. You can do a bool, which is a Boolean value, and you can do a char, which represents like a single character, like a, and you can also do a string, which has like multiple characters essentially together. So like a string would have like a string would have it could have words or like sentences or anything. And now here we have an example of just how to declare a variable and how to actually use it. So you can just do similar to this format here. This is the format you'd use. You would first do the type integer, then the variable, and then this is gonna be the variable name. And then that you can set that equal to the value you want it to represent. So here we want the data you want it to represent. So we want it to represent 7. So we can do that. And then here you can print out the variable just by writing the variable name, and you can also like update its value by adding 1 to it, or and then you can print that out too. So yeah, so variables can be and store data, and you can even update the data that the variable represents. So now on the topic of like updating data and stuff, we can use operators and actually operators. So operators can help you like apply like just do add extra functionality. So let's say that you have a variable and it's like it's a numeric type, for example, like a float or an integer. Then what you can do is you can like add numbers together, you can multiply, you can subtract, you can divide, and you can do the percent symbol for modulus, which just gets the remainder from division. And you can do all these. As well, as we mentioned earlier, you can update a variable's value. So, like for example, if we go back, here we update it. We got this basically right here. Represents the old value, which is 7. Then you add 1 to it. And now we're storing that in new variable. So then essentially new variable will now have 7 plus 1, which is 8 inside of it. And that's the method we use. But just a simpler way to do that is do sum is like the variable plus equals 1. And that'll also do the same thing of updating the value of sum to be increased by 1. And you don't have to just do plus. You can do this notation with like multiply, subtract, divide, modulus, any of them. And then also, if the variables are like of type char, for example, or type string, then you can even concatenate them together to make a larger one. So if you have like this like small substring and you have this substring and this substring, you can add them all together. So now overall sentence will be one single string of hello, how are you? And there's also, and these are just the basic operators, but there's so much built-in operators and so much built-in functions that you can use in order to do in order to manipulate data and manipulate variables in other ways that you want. Now we're gonna look at conditional statements. So conditional statements are all based on like true and false logic or Boolean logic. So so basically, so you would basically add like put a statement, and then it's gonna evaluate the statement, and based on the evaluation of true or false, it can like it'll either do something or not do that. So and when you're actually like coming up with these expressions, you can look at comparing values. So that can be looking at whether the value is like greater than, less than, or equal to like another value. You can also like, and also if you wanted to get like the opposite of the output, you can use a not to invert the output. And then also you can combine multiple statements together into like a longer complex statement. And just use like by using like the and or um things. Now, when you're actually using no, no, that's what you put inside the conditional statement, but you put it like in overall, what you're going to use is you're going to use the if, else if, and else statements. So what if does is basically it triggers. So you're basically going to have like a statement. This is going to be the statement, and then if that evaluates the true, then the if like in whatever is inside the if block that will trigger. Then for the else if, it's similar, and then finally you can have else at the end. If none of these happens, then finally it'll go to the else. And basically how these if, else works is that like first the if statement like goes on, and if that is false, then it'll move down to else if. If that is false, it will move to else. But let's say that if was true, then the else if and else will not occur. But let's say that, but if you wanted like this to occur, but if you wanted, yeah, but if you didn't want that and you wanted it to occur no matter if the other ones were true or not, you could just use an if statement or something as well. Just use like a bunch of if statements. If this was just an if statement and this was an if statement, then basically this could occur, and this could occur all at the same time, kind of. Like all three of them could occur in that scenario. So now to add like additional functionality, we're gonna look at loops. So in Python, they already have that built-in loop function, which is just like which whatever is inside of that will just keep on repeating forever. But you can also add your own loops inside. So you can do a for loop, which basically will repeat an action a certain amount of times. So this is how you can declare it. You can do the for loop. You instantiate like this. This represents like the starting like value. And then this represents like then this is like a conditional statement. And then basically if it's false, it won't occur. But if it's true, then this will occur. And this is like an iterator, so we can just increase this by one every time. So therefore, then this will keep on printing, and um like so how long do you guys think it'll like print for? How much time do you think this will print? Okay, so the answer would be 5 times because first it'll be I equals 0 and it'll print. Then it'll be 1, it'll print. 2, print. 3, print. And 4 is still gonna work, so it'll print. So then because we start at 0, it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll be like the I values. So then that's 5 overall times of running. You can also use a while loop, which will repeat until the conditional statement becomes false. So here, this will keep repeating until like the value of j is until the value of j until this expression of j is greater than 0 is false. So as soon as j gets low enough and becomes 0, then it wouldn't work. But when j is 1, it would work. So now we're just gonna look at some final additional programming tips. So one thing that especially if you're new to programming is to start writing pseudocode initially, so that you can just get down the basic logic of your program and you can kind of understand it in a more English type of way. And then once you have it and you know everything that should occur and you implemented it and you kind of understand the whole program, then what you can do is you can at the end then you can just convert it into code after. But initially you don't have to worry about all the coding syntax and stuff. That's just what it helps with. Another thing to do is add comments so that other collaborators can understand your code, and even you can understand your code if you look back on it later. This is very important, especially as the code grows in complexity and as more and more collaborators and other team members start to use the code and start to develop on it. Um, Also, you can use serial.print to in order to print out values of variables and custom and like you can print out values of variables and also custom status messages you want. This can be great, like very helpful in debugging your code. Um, so like for example, right here in our example, we kind of wanted to print out iterate so we can ensure that the value of iterate is what we expect to be as it goes through the for loop. And then this print can just be set up finished so that we can ensure that then like basically if that runs, then that means that this whole for loop finished successfully. So then that kind of just helps us know that okay, it's kind of running smoothly and where we're at in the program. And also just a note, this is gonna go into serial. This will go into the serial monitor. So you're gonna have to open up the serial monitor and view it. And you can do this by going to tools and then serial monitor. So that's pretty much it for how that will work. But now we're gonna do a quick demo in order to just showcase like how to program in Arduino and just so that you can like apply the concept. So so what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new sketch. So I just created a new sketch here. So it starts up with the setup and the loop functions as we like mentioned earlier. So so we're just gonna do a quick like basic programming like just to review the knowledge that we talked about. So so let's say that we wanted to like declare a variable, for example. So a lot of in SUMATs, we're gonna often be looking at the distance, like the ultrasonic sensor reading, and the distance between, and like so that we can understand the distance where other cars are in relative to us. So like just say that like so we can just create a variable for that. Here we won't deal with actual like all the actual motors and stuff. That will be later on, but this will just be simple, like just simple coding overview in general. So we can just declare the distance as 4 initially. Like you say that initially it read as 4. Then, and this is a global variable. A global variable means that it can be accessed anywhere throughout the code, even in the functions. So now in setup, we're gonna kind of want to just set up everything. So what we can first do is we can do the serial.begin 9600 just that it'll allow us to do our print messages later on. And then let's say that initially when we set up, we wanted to do like a for loop. We wanted to just do a for loop to check stuff. So here we're gonna test your knowledge of the for loop that we learned. So in order to do a for loop, you start with for, and then you want to say you can kind of do a initial initialized variable. So here, let's say we call it iterate. We can set it to 0. Then we can set then we want this to keep on occurring. Let's say that we want this loop to keep on occurring until we reach the distance 4, or right before we reach the distance 4. Then we would do iterate is less than distance. So therefore, it's going to compare every loop. It's going to before it starts, it's going to basically compare iterate with distance. If iterate is less than distance, then that means that it'll like do whatever in the for loop. And then we can say like iterate plus plus. And then we put that. So now we create our for loop. Now we're going to put what we want inside to do. So every time that the for loop runs, what is it going to do? So let's just say that we want to do a quick message right now saying that like so like this could be like a debugging message. So we wanna say that that like we just want to update what the value of the iterator is. So we can say value of iterator is, and then now we want to put what the value of the variable is. So we can do dot print, and we can say iterate because we want to see what the value of iterate is, and we can just do another one just that like we go to the next line and we don't stay on the same line after. And then like you say that, and then we can verify that this whole for loop occurred by doing serial.print setup finish, for example. And then we can do a new line just that goes to the new line. So this could just be like so here we made a for loop and we're using some print statements in order to verify where we are in the code and to verify that like everything's working as expected. So now what we can do is we can just ensure that everything is like that the port is right, that this is right, and the Arduino Nano is right. We can verify it. So it's compiling, it's done, it worked. Now we can upload it. So upload. So now it's gonna run essentially. But then but we have to see, we want to see like what actually occurred. So we're gonna have to open up the serial monitor. See, so we open it up and this is what we can see happen. So it started off, the value of iterator is 0 because it starts with 0. Then it goes, and then it goes at 1, and it goes at 2, it goes at 3. But then when iterate is 4, then it shouldn't print because 4 is not less than 4. So, and that's what occurred here. And then after that, it says setup finished. So that's what we did. We created a for loop, we created an initial for loop, and then we did that. So now we're gonna look into the loop function. Now let's say that we wanted that after the setup. So now here could be something where you like where you in the loop, like every time you might want to check what the updated like ultrasonic sensor value is. So here you might want to like check what the ultrasonic sensor distance is. So that's what you would typically do, but for this example, because we're not actually using the ultrasonic sensor connected yet, we're gonna like manually update our distance. So we're just gonna say that every time the distance increases by 1, for example. Then now we can do some logic. So based on our distance, we can do some logic on let's say that the other person is close. Then we're gonna want to like push them, for example. So we might want to go forward. So we can do all that logic here. So we can use an if else statement to look at what the current distance is, and then based on how close or far they are, then we can do certain actions. So let's just say that here we're gonna look at if they're close. So if distance is less than 10, then you want to do serial.print. Then you can do serial print very close. You can also do here. You would typically do some other logic you can control the motors. You can tell the motors to go forward or backward. But here we're just gonna do this as an example. And then else if, let's say that the distance is between. Let's say that the distance is like. Let's say the distance is greater than or equal to 10, and the distance is less than or equal to or is less than 20. Let's see. So now we're gonna look at whether if the distance is 10, or if the distance is between 10 and 20, but not including 20. It has to be a bit below 20. So if this is the case, that means that you're at a medium distance. So we want to do like serial dot print medium distance. But then if neither one of those are true, if 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 the if statement didn't occur and the else if statement did not occur, then finally it's going to do the else statement. So let's just say that if none of that occurred, then we can just do, how about if none of that, if those did not occur, we just do serial.print far. And also we want to go on a new line every time. We don't want to do very close, all on the same line. We want to go very close and then new line very close. So we can just add a new line. So now we added some more functionality to code. So now we can run it again. So we can do verify again, and then we just want to open up the mod, and then we can do, and we can finally do upload. So now if we look at our serial monitor, it's going to upload, and then it's going to keep on, and then it's going to run. So if we kind of notice, it initially started off doing the setup, and then it did the distance very close, and then it did the medium distance. But that all happened very fast. So right now it's kind of like doing the far, and it's kind of like always gonna be far. So it just keeps on doing far, 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 far. That's why it's like we can't really see anything else because it's just printing far consistently. Like if we clear the output, it just keeps on printing far. But let's just say that if it was like if it's not this and it's not this, we just want to do nothing. Then we can do like nothing in our else statement, for example. Then if we verify this, then we can verify this, and then finally we can upload it again. And then now that we upload this, we can see. Hmm, that's interesting actually. Or we can just do an else statement here where like serial.print. Or we can just make it serial.print on the same line. It can do like we just make it serial.print 1. So then it should print like it'll print the far, but it'll just keep printing on the same line. So let's say that we compiled this, and then let's just say that we open up serial monitor. Now we can upload it, and now we can look at what's gonna happen. But yeah, like actually we'll just take out this if statement. Verify. Or we can just okay, we'll just add an else statement saying while true. So then this will basically put it in like an infinite loop where it does nothing essentially. So now if we finally just compile this and we just do this, and if we look at this here, then this is what we do expect. So this is the initial stuff, setup finished. Then it'll do very close. It's gonna start off at 4. It'll do 4. Then when it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Or it'll be sorry. It's gonna be 4 and it's gonna implement it by 1 the first time. So it'll be like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then when it's 10, it won't do this, but it'll do medium distance. And then finally that'll be done. So it'll finally be triggered and it'll do that while loop and it'll constantly do nothing. But yeah, so that's just a quick overview about, and also this this could be changed to plus plus if we wanted to, just to make it easier, plus plus, and that'll do the same thing as well. But yeah, so overall, this was just a quick it was just a quick overview about using the about basic programming in Arduino, and then a quick demo after just to show up, just so you can showcase your skills. But yeah, so hope this helped and don't hesitate to say any questions you have. Have a great day.